So, this marks the beginning of the first reoccurring series on my channel, and yeah, it's pretty much just as it says. We're going to be taking more in-depth looks at the moment. I'm just playing Neptunia characters, so maybe something else soon. And also, we're going to be doing a bit of speculating in terms of how they could be developed. So yeah, let's get started with the first one. And I'm doing Nepgear as the first one, just because, I also had Neptune sort of planned out, but turns out I have a lot to say about her. So, that's gonna be at least two parts, unlike every other one, so I'm probably saving her for last, at least in terms of the list of who I have planned at the moment. I don't want to keep delaying it. But, yeah. So we're starting with Nepgear, because I kind of know what I'm going to say already about her, and I figured I should start with, someone who's actually had a protagonist role in the main series, so, yeah. I guess Gears up first. Let's, go. Nepgear, also known as Purple Sister, Gearsy, Gigi, Gear-chan, etc., is Neptune's adorable younger sister, and in all her appearances has the role of Planeptune's CPU candidate, and has taken the role of protagonist twice, both in the main series, being Hyperdimension Neptunia Mark II and Hyperdimension Neptunia Rebirth 2 Sister's Generation, and even after she had her protagonist spotlight given back to Neptune, she still has a very important supporting role in the rest of the main timeline. A trait she shares with the other candidates is that there are only 3 variations of her, one in the remake version of the Super Dimension, and one in both the versions of the Hyperdimension. No version of her or the other candidates exist in the Ultra or Zero dimensions. However, the Hyperdimension version of Nepgear has traveled to both the Ultra and Zero dimensions along with Neptune, and in both places has played a very significant supporting role. In the Super Dimension, Nepgear's role is similar to that of a spin-off, where she really exists just to be playable, so there's not exactly much to talk about there. However, the Hyperdimension version has had quite a lot of development. The Hyperdimension version of Nepgear's character revolves around her looking up to Neptune, possibly even a little too much. She views her sister as kind of infallible, at least in terms of serving her main duty as a CPU. She's obviously able to recognize how lazy her sister is, but simply respects her abilities upon getting serious, so much so that it comes off more of a senpai notice me kind of situation, almost comedic in a way. It's this overwhelming desire for her sister to care for her and spend time with her that could almost come off as having romantic feelings for her sister, but being unable to convey them. This leads to the two sisters actually being a semi-popular ship within the community. However, the reason it's not more popular and why I don't believe in it is that it's kind of missing the point. The point is that Nepgear is so obsessed with the statement that her sister is so much better than her is to the point where it looks like she has feelings, when in reality this is just a super extreme form of familial love. The natural kind, not the incesty kind that some people seem to make it out as. Though let's be honest, despite not really viewing her older sister as like a straight up romantic partner, should the opportunity to fuck her older sister appear, something tells me Nepgear would be more than okay with it. This is essentially the driving force behind Mark/Rebirth 2's plot, as well as the first arc of the anime, where suddenly Neptune is out of commission for some reason and is actually in danger, and Nepgear has to kind of set aside this overwhelming obsession with her older sister being better to actually go and be, the better one and save her older sister. And with just simply how obsessed with her older sister she is, it really causes some problems in her head and basically causes a cycle of self-doubt, as she's completely incapable of comprehending the fact that she might actually be able to do something better than her older sister and, help out her older sister in such a significant way, which is being made much worse by the reality that she actually lost once alongside her sister. And by pure coincidence, in the form of the Sherasite not being pure or whatever, she was the one freed instead of Neptune, so she just really does not believe that she's capable of such a feat. However, as the story goes on, she becomes more and more confident. Now, if we follow the true path, she, overcomes her self-doubt, and she, beats R4 and saves Neptune. Then moving on to, the next games, she still kind of keeps her same situation, because Neptune supposedly seems to have, once again, kind of caused the issue to persist, probably by pure accident, by once again having Nepgear think so highly of her. However, her development wasn't undone entirely, as a major important difference is that she no longer views her older sister as infallible, as she did before, as even before she was kind of ignorant of her older sister's laziness. Now she understands that, Neptune makes mistakes. I mean, hell, she even got slightly mad, but it definitely came off in a different manner, as she ended up kind of reflecting it back on herself, thinking she wasn't good enough, and that's why Neptune, forgot to get her a souvenir or something. The rest of her development through the V2s is essentially about her just becoming a little bit more confident in herself and being able to be more independent, essentially basically solidifying what she gained from her main adventure. So now, at the current moment, we have a very strong, capable CPU candidate that would even be ready to take up the mantle of being Neptune's full-on CPU should something happen to Neptune, which, let's be real, probably won't in the main timeline, but whatever. Now let's go over Nepgear's other relationships. As while they aren't as relevant to her character development, it is still important to cover that, as there is a chance that they could become relevant in the future. With Histoire, she essentially views Histoire the same as Neptune. So, a good friend. Well, maybe slow, she can essentially tell you anything and can be very helpful. However, she can be a little bit hard to deal with at times when it comes to the whole, being stuck up about CPU work kind of deal. Histoire views her as kind of a child. She's less mature and needs some help in some aspects, unlike Neptune. However, she's definitely much more reliable than Neptune when it comes to, doing work and stuff. However, Neptune can still sometimes pull her away and do that because of her overwhelming obsession with Neptune, so it's not always reliable help, I'll say that. Noir and Blanc, while they of course consider her a friend, it's nothing really significant about that other than being thankful that she was able to unite the candidates and save their asses. So, yeah, not too special, but still as a good friend. Now, Uni, on the other hand, is nothing short of a best friend. They're pretty much inseparable. I mean, if they're not obsessing over their big sisters, they're going to be hanging out together, most likely. So, also, of course, I have to bring it up, potential romantic option. Yes, I totally see it. Out of any ship in the series, this is definitely the one that I definitely support Unigear far more than any other ship in the series. So, if there's any pair that becomes canon, this is most likely going to be it. Now, Rom and Ram definitely look up to Nepgear, and they're definitely very close. However, probably not close enough to really view Nepgear as family. Probably same goes from Nepgear's perspective. However, they're very great friends. I mean, I bet Rom and Ram could always count on Nepgear to fix any sort of situation that they can. So, they're very good friends, not probably as much as Nepgear and Uni, but still very solid due to their experiences, against R4 and all that. So, Yeah, IF likely views Nepgear as an extremely close friend. I mean, possibly even as a little sister. They're very close together. No, I don't really believe in them as a pair. Yeah, there was, the kiss scene and all that, but I not only was that kind of actually like necessary, because if you remember in the plot, IF really had no other options in the moment like to get Nepgear going, but and based on what she said afterwards, it was clear that she was a little bit uncomfortable about doing that since she didn't really mean anything in it other than to just like get Nepgear to do better, but that's you can believe in what you want. Ship wise, I'm not saying you can't, but yeah, they're at the very least extremely close. Compa's pretty much the same as IF, though there's probably a very low likelihood of Compa viewing her as a little sister, more as just an extremely close friend. I don't know. I guess it's more just in Compa's nature. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Next up, Vert. Vert views Nepgear as a candidate to be stolen from Neptune and kept as her own little sister. Nepgear's probably aware of that and doesn't care too much. She probably views Vert as almost a big sister at this point. So, whatever. That's that. Plutia, I can't really decide whether she directly views Nepgear as a little sister, but hey, she'd probably still do anything for Nepgear, let's be honest. Yeah, they're also really close. Not much to say there. Yeah, let's see. Uzume, probably just good friends. And finally, though, the Ultra Dimension Neptune. We got direct confirmation that Nepgear actually kind of wants to be the Ultra Dimension Neptune's little sister, as she was always interested in seeing, like a more mature Neptune or whatever. So now she essentially has two big sisters to be obsessed over. And, yeah, I mean, I don't really have much to say after that. That's a thing, but, yeah. I'd say that's really it for, relationships with other members of, important members of the cast. So, yeah. So, before we can move on to speculating, there's something else we have to take a look at. A very different take on Nepgear's development, and probably, the one alternate ending that stands out more than any other in the series. I'm, of course, talking about the conquest ending. So, if I'm assuming, spoilers and all, you know it, you've already experienced it in some way if you're watching this, but just to review, Nepgear is forced to kill all the CPUs and candidates, including Neptune, in the end, her big sister, in order to power up Gehaburn enough so she can actually take that route to killing R4. And it essentially just ends off afterwards with Nepgear now being the only CPU and Planet Neptune essentially taking over the world. So it's a very open-ended ending, but it's a very different take on Nepgear's, kind of personality and such, as in this scenario, instead of properly developing, her development was very rushed, as basically she had to get mature really fast, to actually be prepared to take the burden of killing everyone, including the sister she obsessed so much over. And not only that, but she also essentially rules the entire world now, and potentially is in charge of counteracting R4 in the future should she come back. That's kind of left open-ended. Like, R4 said she would come back, though we don't know if that's true or not. And, I mean, yeah, we'll get to that in a second, but, of course, Nepgear feels intense guilt over what she has to do, but she's surprisingly capable. Like I said, she essentially had to speed run maturity. She had to essentially become an adult, and, be ready to be the one and only CPU. So See, Nepgear's main struggle in the conquest ending is not having to violently part ways with her sister by, taking her own sister's life, but more so the question of, is she doing the right thing? That moral leap that had to occur, and especially because she viewed herself as so weak, it's extremely tough for her to get over that. She seriously cannot get the thought out of her head that there has to be some other solution, some way she could have gotten around this, but in the end, she has to confront reality that at least now there's no longer any other option, so she has to do it. It's very interesting because she's able to develop in that same way, but it's essentially speedrunning it. So that was really the perfect segue into talking about what could be done, because in the main timeline, the true endings, Nepgear's development is kind of done, because I assume she's not actually going to have to take the role of CPU from Neptune. I assume Neptune's going to remain the protagonist. She might get a temporary protagonist role again, but I don't really see much that can be done. That's why I think a what if scenario, basically expanding on the conquest ending, would be pretty neat, because I imagine either Nepgear would, well, basically, okay, regardless of what it is, it would revolve around Nepgear not being confident in herself being the CPU. So either R4 returns as she threatened to, and Nepgear, is unsure of, being able to beat her. Or I also have the idea of, I'll talk about this more in a future video. I plan on doing sort of a part 2 to what the community wants video, where I'll talk about more in depth about ideas and stuff. So, I had the idea that Neptune actually comes back to life, and she has some plan to stop R4, because maybe R4 is, yeah, she's coming back, but she's also getting stronger, so eventually there will be no way to stop her. So Neptune has some way to solve the problem, but it's not the most morally good, and Nepgear is stuck between the decision of, does she follow her sister and do some not very okay stuff, or does she go against her sister as the CPU and try to figure things out her way? So I don't know. I thought that'd be a pretty interesting one. It would, sort of put a finale on Nepgear's development, even though it would probably not be canon. Though I imagine I also kind of threw that out in my What the Community Wants video. Any sort of continuation of a not true ending, there could actually be some time travel shenanigans involved that could actually make it canon. So that's a possibility. Maybe there's some time travel to go back and stop herself from doing the conquest ending. So yeah. That's pretty much all I have to say regarding Nepgear. Next up, I'm probably going to do Noir. I don't know. Let me know if you want something different. Yeah, that's pretty much it, I think, from me. So it's kind of becoming a thing, at least to me now. So fuck off.